I'm working on a video involving the topic of racism, and there's an important issue I'd rather cover here in a separate video rather than going on a long tangent in the middle of that one. That issue is the definition of racism, the plasticity of language, and the potential for the contention over this particular word's definition to muddy the waters of our socio-political discourse. First, let's talk about the traditional definition of racism that you'll find in most dictionaries. That definition is something to the effect of what dictionary.com offers. A belief or doctrine that inherent differences among the various human racial groups determines cultural or individual achievement, usually involving the idea that one's own race is superior and has the right to dominate others, or that a particular racial group is inferior to others. This is the typical denotation intended when people mention racism or describe something as racist or someone as racist. It means, hey, that thing you just did or said demonstrates that you think you belong to a superior race, or you think race X is inferior. The extremely negative connotation of this word also suggests that someone being racist is a negative thing. That's because, by and large, as a society, we agree that this form of racism exists and it's terrible. This definition has nothing to do with the status of the victim, culprit, or accuser. If you're a black person who thinks white people are an inferior breed of humans, then you're a racist by the most accepted definition. If you're a white person who thinks your skin color entitles you to the domination of Asian people or is the reason for your achievements, you are a racist by that definition. No matter what your race and whether or not you were born in a system where you are a member of the majority with no feelings about racial superiority or inferiority, you're not a racist by that definition. That definition of the term is logical and meaningful, and because this planet has a depressing amount of this version of racism, it's an important word and definition to have in our language and for its speakers and writers to understand. A relatively more recent definition of racism requires there to be prejudice plus the inherent power of some systemic majority in order for racism to occur. By that definition, no matter what you say or do, unless you belong to a racial majority, which thereby apparently has some kind of inherent systemic power, it's impossible for your actions to be racist. You can be prejudiced or bigoted, but you can't be racist by that definition unless you belong to the ethnic majority. In America, that means the only racists are white people, according to that definition. It's no wonder that it hasn't caught on. Now, if you want to acknowledge this latter definition of racism, that's fine. Use it that way, if you wish. I find that definition to broaden the term so much and restrict it in other places that it's useless as anything other than a get-out-of-racism free card for minorities who want to say terrible things, including gross generalizations about white people. If that really is the primary function for that definition, there's a problem. It doesn't work. That definition doesn't make it any less racist for ethnic minorities to say and do horribly prejudiced and bigoted things towards the ethnic majority. Why not? Because adding a new definition to a previously existing word in our language does not nullify the original meaning, especially if it's a more practical and useful denotation, which almost everyone means when applying the word. It's perfectly fine to add definitions to the existing lexicon, but a new definition for an existing word only replaces the original if society completely abandons it. This does happen sometimes, such as the word funny. Funny used to be an adjective for the noun fun, similar to how dirty is an adjective for the noun dirt. At one time, English speakers would say this is a funny party instead of this is a fun party. Eventually, so many people used the word funny exclusively as a common synonym for humorous that it became its primary definition. Today, if you tried to use funny with its original definition, people would be confused because we just don't use it that way anymore. That has not happened with the prejudice plus power definition of racism, as the overwhelming majority of the 1,500 million people on the planet who speak English are unaware or confused by the new definition. But even if all 1,500 million English speakers do acknowledge and understand that new definition, unless they overall agree that it is such a superior definition to the original that most of them exclusively intend that meaning when using the word, it only coexists with the original definition. It does not replace it. Consider the word text, which has a modern definition as a noun and verb referring to a digital mobile device message or the action of sending one. This definition has not erased the word text in reference to printed copy, such as the text in a book. So I'm sorry, minorities, but if you happen to believe some races to be inherently inferior or superior to others, or that you feel inherent differences in races are what determine cultural or individual accomplishment, then you're a racist. You're not a reverse racist either for being racist towards the majority. You're just a racist like any white person who would behave in such a way toward a minority would be. And if you wind up defending yourself against that claim of racism in this way, just remember that it's not your definition of racism which someone's accusing you. The word murder also means flock of crows, but if I'm on trial for murder and my best defense is to insist that I did not commit a flock of crows, I'm going to prison.